All right, let's jump right into a question that honestly trips up a lot of nonprofit leaders. If you're a small organization, do you really need to register to fundraise in all 50 states? We're going to break it down.
Welcome to the Multi-State Fundraising Compliance Series. We're here to make charitable solicitation registration a lot less confusing for nonprofit leaders and their teams. This resource is provided by Ironwood Registrations.
So let's get right to it. The big question. Do small nonprofits actually have to register in every single state? This is a huge point of confusion, and frankly, it can feel pretty overwhelming if you don't know the rules of the road.
There's this really common assumption out there that these multi-state registration requirements are just for the big national organizations. The ones with huge fundraising departments and massive budgets. But the truth is, it's a little more nuanced than that.
So, to get to the real answer, we first have to understand a super important concept. Charitable fundraising is regulated at the state level, not by the federal government.
And you might be wondering, why do states even do this? While they created these laws to protect the residents from fraud, to make sure there's transparency in how donations are used, and just generally to keep an eye on fundraising within their borders. And because every state has its own system, the requirements can be wildly different from one place to the next.
Okay, so with that in mind, let's get to the good news, which is really the core answer to our question. For most small nonprofits, the reality is you absolutely do not need to register everywhere. Here's the key phrase to remember. Registration requirements are typically triggered only when a nonprofit actively solicits donations from people in a certain state. So, if your organization mostly fundraises locally, you might only need to register in your home state and maybe a couple of others where you're specifically asking for support. No active asking, usually no registration required.
All right, let's build on that, because there's another really important piece of the puzzle for smaller charities, and that's something called exemptions.
See, a lot of states have these built-in exemptions just for smaller organizations. They often kick in if you raise less than a certain amount of money each year, say under $25,000, or if you rely mostly on volunteers for fundraising, or if you don't use any paid professionals to bring in donations.
But, and this is a really big but, the rules are different everywhere. Just because you qualify for an exemption in your home state doesn't automatically mean you'll qualify in the state next door. And get this, in some places, you still have to file paperwork to officially claim that you're exempt.
Okay, this is where things can get a little complicated, and it's probably the biggest point of confusion for pretty much everyone. Online fundraising. I mean, think about it. You've got your website's donate button, your email campaigns, your social media posts. All of these can be seen by people anywhere in the country. So does that mean just having a donate button means you have to register in all 50 states?
Well, generally, no. Most state regulators are looking to see if you are actively targeting donors in their state. Are you running ads aimed at their residents? Are you sending direct mail there? Just passively getting a random online donation from another state usually isn't enough to trigger registration. That said, if you start getting a lot of donations from many different states, well, that's when the analysis might start to change.
And that brings us to the next logical question, right? As your nonprofit gets bigger, your registration needs are probably going to grow too. So what are the triggers you should be looking out for? You can almost see the journey here. You start local. Then you launch some online campaigns. And then, all of a sudden, you're getting a steady stream of donations from out of state. That's the moment. That's when it's time to sit down and formally review your registration needs. Things like national email campaigns or direct mail, those are also huge triggers.
So how in the world do you manage all of this without it turning into a giant headache? The key really is proactive compliance planning. It's all about thinking ahead as your fundraising starts to grow.
A good plan really just involves a few key things. First, know which states even have these registration laws. Then, use your donor data. See where your money is actually coming from. Make it a habit to check the exemption rules every so often, because they can change. And most importantly, keep an eye on how your fundraising is expanding. This kind of proactive approach lets you stay focused on your mission instead of worrying about compliance. So let's bring it all home. The big takeaway here is that small nonprofits do not need to register in every single state, especially when their fundraising is mostly local. But as you grow and as you expand your reach, especially online, your registration needs are probably going to expand right along with you.
Understanding when you need to register and how those exemptions work, that's really the secret to staying compliant while you continue to grow your impact. So the final question to ask yourself is this: is your fundraising plan ready for that growth?